Hi, welcome to the Janet Generally Speaking podcast. I'm Janet Gericke, and this is going to be the very first episode of talking to NPOs. I've got Tracy Macquarie, the founder of BarkingMad SA, in studio with me, and we're going to talk about the charity, the non-profit organization, which is a rescue center. But I'm going to get Tracy to give us an introduction to BarkingMad and how it started and what its purpose is. How's it, Tracy?
How's it? Okay, get comfortable.
Yeah, get comfortable.
Okay, so my life before this work, I worked in television, and one day I was working and I saw a little stray dog running outside, and we had the whole team out trying to catch this dog. It was quite an adventure, because although it was hungry and lost, it was still not wanting to be caught. And it really got me interested into what happens to animals when they get lost. So I started volunteering at the local SPCA, and I went there every Saturday. They had a dog walking program. I loved it. I did a lot of stuff with my own dogs. I started looking into dog behavior, and I did agility with my dogs. So I always had a passion for dogs. And that little dog that was running around by the fire station across from Tag Post, she just really kicked something into me that, more can be done, because I struggled. When we did eventually catch her, I struggled to find her owners. And there's many dogs that end up in that situation. The return to owner rate out there is very small. So at that stage, because we were working in a digital format, our graphic artist and developer designed us a website. The aim was to have a central portal for all rescues to actually post their dogs looking for homes. Because back then, websites weren't a big thing like they are now. There was no social media. So trying to get the information out was something difficult. And I'd researched and seen in America they had that kind of format. And then to drive more people to the website, we had to make it more attractive to the general public. And we partnered with Montego, who support our Click to Feed project. And in that Click to Feed project, people got onto the website daily. They click, and Montego give us food to give to shelters across the country. So it started off, that was going to be my foray into animal rescue, and I was going to continue my volunteering on the weekends. And then the more I got involved with it, the more I saw, the behavior stuff that I was studying. It's very hard to implement that kind of stuff in shelters. And when you see how hard all the shelters work, with very little, you realize that's not something they can now just say, hey, yeah, let's add that to the list of costs. So I saw a program on television called Dogtown, and that is Best Friends Animal Society in Utah. And I decided I'm going to go visit them and see, if it is as good as it looks on TV.
Yeah.
Because after all, I'm an editor, so I know you can make things look better than they are. So I took the trip. I volunteered there for about a month, and I did some courses while I was there. They had a course how to start and run an animal sanctuary, and a basic behavior course. So I did those. I came back with the intention of giving that blueprint and all that stuff I'd learned. I put it all onto a CD. I sent it out to all the shelters. And I just realized that, they all want to do it. It's just, unless you are the person that can physically do the behavior and the training, they don't have that luxury.
And because of limited resources.
Yeah. It's just not, they're struggling to make ends meet just for the day-to-day care. And back then also, behavior wasn't really as much in the forefront as it is now. So what happened was, in December, one of the shelters I was volunteering for, they were in private boarding kennels, which a lot of rescues do. They hire space in private boarding kennels. But they had to be out during the Christmas period, because obviously that's when the boarding kennels make their money. So fortunately for me, I'd finished my last big TV project, so I had a bit of time, so I offered to take those dogs. So I had a friend who had a plot, and she allowed me to build 4 little kennels there for me to take care of these dogs over Christmas. And I did that, and you know, every day I was there, I was like, how am I going to go back to being in a dark room on my own, looking through hours and hours of footage. It took a while. It took 6 months for me to come to the reality that, yeah, I'm not going back. When people were calling to make bookings and that, I'd say I was booked because I wanted to be with the dogs. And then that's how it started. It kind of came from nowhere. It wasn't a plan, but I'd at least done a bit of research before. So when the decision had been made, I'd already visited best friends. I'd already seen what best practice looks like. I'd already got my kind of blueprint of what I wanted if I had a shelter, what I would like it to be. And that's what I did. So because we had run as the network for so long, the BarkingMad network, where we share all the animals, when we started actually physically caring for animals in a shelter environment, there was a bit of confusion because obviously on the website there's dogs from all over the country. So people would arrive.
Had Facebook, sorry to interrupt, but had Facebook started by that stage?
Yes.
Okay.
So now Facebook started, so we're sharing dogs, dogs that are on the network, and we're sharing dogs that are in the shelter. And people weren't looking where the dog was based.
Oh, okay.
So we had people arriving
to fetch
at BarkingMad to come look at a Cape Town dog.
Yes.
So we realized we had to separate those two in name to try and have a differentiation so people knew that this is a network dog and this is a dog that is at the physical shelter.
Yes.
And of course, we called the shelter Dogtown, after where I learned everything that I knew about creating a shelter at the time. And that's how we ended up having the two. We continued with the BarkingMad network.
And that's what you're focusing on now.
Yeah. BarkingMad kind of evolved because I wanted it to always be a support base for animal shelters and the public. A lot of the time people want to surrender a dog for something really simple that can be fixed, but they don't understand and they don't have the tools. So we started building a network of behaviorists that could go out and help families keep their pets by working with them. And we've started focusing on home-to-home adoptions because the shelters are so overwhelmed. We were trying to stop the dogs actually going into shelters because back in the day when we started, all the dogs coming in were really like lost, abandoned, abused dogs, whereas now the predominantly the most dogs that are coming into the shelter environment are people's pets. Sure. And that's not really where a pet should really end up. So we created a function where we do home-to-home adoptions. Right. So you load your dog to the website. We do all background checks of people that are interested in. We check the sterilization, vaccination history, and then we arrange the meet and greet for the two families to meet each other. If they need a behavior to support them in that, we have the behaviorist. If not, they do the meet and greet. They let us know everything's gone fine. The dog, a contract is signed, and the dog is adopted. So
the process is almost exactly the same as it would be going to a shelter, basically.
Yeah.
And that is facilitated by BarkingMad.
Yes.
That is fantastic.
We have a team dedicated that's what they focus on.
Yeah. So part of BarkingMad, obviously, it's evolved over the years, and I know that you're working on a number of initiatives now that are need money.
Yes. Always.
So one of them is Click to Feed, and that is going to the website. And actually, I met somebody the other day, and I mentioned for some reason I mentioned BarkingMad, and they said, I do Click to Feed every single day, which was amazing. I loved, so I thanked them on your behalf.
Thank you.
There's another initiative that I want to talk about, which is very similar to home-to-home adoptions in that you want to keep dogs with people and families. Not Without My Dog. Tell me about that. that?
So that's come about because the majority of dogs being surrendered are being surrendered because of body corporate rules.
Okay.
It's probably one of my most upsetting, because here you have families that do love their dogs, that want their dogs. They can't afford to live in certain areas or certain complexes, and the ones that they can afford either have no pets or ridiculous rules like it's got to be 40 centimetres high, which makes absolutely no sense. There's no science behind that decision. I don't know who thought it up or why it has progressed the way it has.
Yeah.
And then we have people having to give up their dogs into the shelter environment. The dogs do not cope. The chances of finding homes, there are thousands that don't ever make it out of shelters.
Sure.
So it could spend its life in a shelter or years or months, and every day it stays, no matter how good the shelter is. Every day they're in a shelter, they lose a little bit of themselves.
Sure. That's very sad. Because it's a lifetime prison sentence, basically.
Yeah, I mean, some dogs, and there's no set rule to it either. Some dogs come in and out super quick.
Yeah.
Obviously, puppies do better. But the problem is with the majority of these body corporate rules, it's the large breed dogs that are getting surrendered.
Yeah.
And then the problem with that is then there's nowhere for those large dogs to get adopted, because the complexes are saying they don't want large breed dogs.
So it's a vicious circle.
Vicious circle. And the truth of the matter is, if you've got a large breed Boerboel type dog and you've got a small little dog, that Boerboel's probably going to handle that complex life a lot better than the little terrier you've got running around who is now
and making a big noise.
Exactly. I mean, anyone who's known some of these larger breed dogs knows that, they don't really get involved unless they have to.
Yeah.
He's going to park off on the porch all day unless somebody's come in, and then he's like, oh, I've got to do my job now, but you've got to go bark him away. Otherwise, you wouldn't even know they're there.
That's so very, very true. For people that have dogs will know that, I think, very much. And I think with regards to the little terriers, I think people who are the neighbours of those dogs know that they can be very vocal. They've got a lot to say.
Oh, yeah. I can relate. I also have short man syndrome.
So, without my dog, I mean, this is not something that you've just come up with. You've developed a website. You've developed an infrastructure where people on the Facebook page, for example, can post, I need either a home or a home-to-home adoption. And the other thing is that they have access to resources on the website. I mean, I've seen that, you can talk to a lawyer if you need to and get real advice about how to deal with the body corporate and CSOS and all those rules and regulations. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about the website briefly before we go on to your exciting research.
So also, everything I seem to work on evolves very quickly. What I think it's going to be ends up, it changes.
Yeah.
So originally it was basically to just have people let us know if they're having problems with their body corporate. We have a team that does then go to the ombudsman and tries to argue the point. Also, sometimes the body corporates are just not aware of how silly the rule is and how they are contributing to thousands of animals losing their lives.
Yeah.
And sometimes if you can just have someone explain that to the body corporate, that already helps. If they are open and, decent human beings,
yes,
and they will listen to the argument of having those rules. But then we do have a team that if the families are banging heads with the body corporates, then we will go to the ombudsman and see if there's a way we can come to a kind of happy medium between the two. And from that, people started contacting us saying, okay, I'm looking for accommodation, I can't find it. So then we started adding that to the team's portfolio. They had to start looking now for pet-friendly accommodation. We invited estate agents that will help us to look for pet friendly in their areas. So if somebody does contact us, they can see the estate agents that have signed up in their area who are there to help them find a pet friendly accommodation. And again, if somebody has a pet friendly accommodation that they're trying to rent out, we will happily post that as well. We're just trying to kind of, again, sort of like what BarkingMad was, create that central point so that if you're looking for pet friendly accommodation or need help finding your way around the body corporate or understanding the rules, because what's come up time and time again is the estate agents are telling the families they can have dogs and not explaining the rules. I do understand it is the person's responsibility to go and actually read those rules beforehand, but you know, some of them think, well, the estate agent has said, they've seen the other person has a dog, meanwhile they've got the dog on the down low as well. So people need to read those rules before they buy or rent in the areas. But obviously a lot of the time it's just cost. They just can't afford the places that will allow a pet. And I don't understand why there isn't more pet friendly, because I can tell you now, if you take on somebody with pets, they are going to be a lot more long-term lease kind of client, because they know how difficult it is to find accommodation, and they're going to stick it out and look after this accommodation they've got because they don't want to lose it.
Yeah. And most people who have dogs know how to care with it. I mean, the people that have dogs that don't know how to care for their pets is very small in comparison to that. You're walking and all that kind of stuff.
And then they're not going to be the ones making an effort to find a pet-friendly accommodation.
Exactly.
I mean, don't get me wrong, probably a lot of the time people just use it as an excuse. Lately, a lot of people are going as refugees to America. And
coming back again.
But that is one of the big reasons people are surrendering their dogs. You know, so all things have this terrible knock-on effect. Cost of living, huge. Sometimes people have lost their jobs. They're moving in with families. You know, there are real situations.
Exactly.
And then don't even get me started on the old age homes and stuff. Because that, you know, unless I win the lotto, I'm not going to fix that.
But that, just one last thing before we go on to the research. I wanted just to clarify that we're not only talking dogs.
No. Dogs and cats. I should have, when I created the website, I should have said, not without my pet. But I did not without my dog, because I'm primarily a dog person. But it does. It includes all pets, actually. You know, some people have gerbils or budgies, and they find out last minute that they're not allowed those.
And that a bird is not allowed. So, okay, your big project that has taken up so much of your time, effort and energy, and had you traveling around South Africa, which must have been very interesting on its own. However, there was a very good reason, and this was your research which you got funding for, and obviously had to reach certain things in order to get that funding. Tell us about it, because it's exciting.
It is very exciting and very daunting. Just before COVID, I did a research project that Battersea funded, where I visited 100 shelters in the Gauteng area, just to kind of get a feel of what is needed. Them as a funder wanted to know what the landscape looked like. At the time, it was kind of a beginning of a project, so that once they know what the situation is, then they could choose best where to fund. Then COVID happened, the whole thing went skadonk, and it kind of died down. But BarkingMad continued with its shelter support part of the project, where we were visiting shelters, training staff on site, offering training for the staff, and obviously helping with the food from Click to Feed. But we always wanted to do more, and when we have tried to get funds to help the shelter environment as a whole, they've always wanted to know, well, like, what is our baseline? What am I saying is good and bad? What is that? And we realized we need to actually create that baseline. That doesn't exist. So what the project is that got picked up again last year from Battersea, which we are extremely grateful because, of course...
Just explain who Battersea is.
Oh, Battersea Dog and Cat Homes is an amazing animal charity in the UK, and they have a few countries that they support.
Okay. South Africa's obviously
South
one
Africa,
of them.
Thankfully, after that first research project, it became, South Africa became one of their focus countries. So when the project was now picked up again, and they asked, like, so what do I need to be able to give them the information and other funders, or at least know what the sector needs to help? And I then discussed with them the minimum standards. It was going to be part of that original project, but with it falling away, it never came to fruition. So basically what we're trying to do is say, okay, animal rescues. You know, some people will say, oh, they're really good. What does that mean? What does good mean? You know, good to you might not be good to me. So,
or good to the dog.
Yeah. So it was very much trying to create a minimum standard. Most industries have a set of standards, and animal welfare, because we're already on the backbone most of the time with funders, because it's very hard to get funding for animal charity. So we wanted to make ourselves more professional, more in line, and have a baseline for us to be able to see if somebody's good or below good or average, but we needed a baseline to be able to measure that against. So what we did the last year and the beginning of this year is we literally travelled all 9 provinces. We mapped out every shelter that we could find. We focused this part of the research just on shelters, so we haven't concentrated on outreach or TNR or fostering. It's
TNR?
just trap, neuter, release or return.
So that's more cats though.
Yeah. So we haven't focused on that at this stage. We have purely focused on shelters that house and care for dogs, domestic dogs and cats. So we visited over 200 shelters this time physically. We've travelled 17,000 kilometres across the country. And it was an eye-opener. Some of the shelters are 400 kilometres away from each other. There's nothing in between.
Wow.
So where I'm thinking we're really struggling, when you go out to these outer areas, they are really struggling because their community only has them for 400 kilometres, and their community is not flush with funds that they can support them to be able to help them. So it was a really big eye-opener, but the reason that we went and visited the shelters was when we decided we wanted to create minimum standards, we looked internationally to see what's there. We did a huge environmental landscape of what's happening. We've engaged a lot with the ADCH, which is the Association of Dog and Cat Homes in the UK, which is basically a minimum standard body for shelters there, to see what they were doing and how it was working. But of course, you can't take what's happening in the UK and bring it here. We are completely different.
Yeah.
Even within South Africa, we are like 9 different countries. Each province runs very differently on how they shelter animals. So we took the ADCH kind of as a baseline for us to decide now how we're going to create these minimum standards. And we realized, you know what, we need the shelters. They need to tell us what they think is an achievable minimum standard. So we've been visiting the shelters, meeting them, seeing where they're struggling, what it is they need. So we've got a really good idea. We know how much food's being used, we know how many dogs and cats are in the shelters, and we know where the need is. So what we did after we met everyone, we then started inviting them to in-person workshops and online workshops.
Okay.
The in-person workshops we did in Natal, Gauteng and Western Cape, and we basically set up a room, got everybody into the room and said, all right, what do you think needs to be in these minimum standards? We broke it up into different areas, animal care, finance, everything that comes up in animal welfare.
I've seen
a shelter.
I've seen some of the pictures and the pages and the drawings and the boards with all of this writing and stuff. So
and it's been amazing because this minimum standards is being created for shelters, but it's being created by the shelters.
Yeah.
So they are the ones putting in the input. And then what happens is we'll give each group a topic. They put all their input in, and then we move them across to another group's board.
Yes.
And then they look at that group's board and say, okay, but we think this should be part of that, and this.
Yeah.
And then each of them are adding all the time. And then when we finish the in-person workshops in that province, we get all that information back, we create a document, and we send it back out to everyone and say, okay, from the workshops in your area, this is what came up. What do you want to add? What is missing? Especially when you've left the environment of working, you might think, oh, we should have put this in, or why didn't I think of that? So it's an opportunity then for the shelters to put more information in. And each shelter that has been part of the workshop gets that document, and they send it back, and we take everybody's information again. So we've almost finished the in-person workshops. We've started doing online workshops, which is a little bit more concise. We do the same thing, but we show what we've already gathered information on. So here we say, okay, out of all the in-person workshops so far, this is what we've got in this area. What do you think needs added, or what do you think is not possible? And also what's come up a lot is when you're writing a minimum standard, you can't just say dog needs exercise. That minimum standard has got to be very specific. So the dog needs to leave their enclosure at least once a day for 10 minutes and experience. So, trying to get people to think and put it down in paper, things that they actually do every day. But it's just for them to put it all down in paper. And then by the end of March, we will have finished the workshops. And then we will take everything with the feedback we've got after we've sent them their feedback from the workshop. Then we create our first draft of minimum standards. Once we've done that, we'll start reaching out to stakeholders, get their input into it, and then once we've got that, we will then send it back out to the shelters for final approval, final changes.
So when people think of minimum standards, sometimes it's like, those are going to be the rules, and but that's not not the case, and you've spoken about the fact that if a shelter has a problem reaching a minimum standard, it's not a case of they're bad. It's a case of you guys will go out and help them to reach those minimum standards.
So the main focus, we've had it asked a lot, and we've kind of said to people, we're not going to be the referee of this situation. We are going to be the coaches. So when we create these minimum standards and together collectively, and everybody agrees on, what will happen is they will then be sent the minimum standards with a self-assessment form. And they will go through that self-assessment form, and we are hoping they are as honest as possible, because we can't help if we don't know. And the idea is that once they've created their self-assessment and sent it back to us, we have an idea, okay, so they're really struggling in this area and this area. Because part of becoming a part of, once we have the minimum standards, we'll create a professional body. And part of being a part of the professional body is you have to have reached minimum standards. But we're not going to leave people behind. If they send us that self-assessment form and we see they need help, when we start doing our in-person assessments or evaluations, we will then at least know what we're going to help them with, and actually then start putting programs in place to get them up to minimum standards. So we're kind of thinking of the wording, we just got to think of like a fledgling member or something. That they're not quite there yet. They're trying. But we're working on it. And the hope is that, with the support and hopefully some funding to support them as well, that we can then uplift them and get as many of the shelters to reach minimum standards. Because the truth of the matter is we can't really afford for any more to be closing down. I mean, I saw just recently another, I think it's Randfontein SPCA is now closed. We cannot lose the SPCAs. In provinces where there's very few of them, you pick it up very quickly.
The very important question with any NPO is the question of money. And I know that from a shelter, animal shelter perspective, things have been taken away over years where you could have applied for funding. I mean, I remember you talking about the lotto and those kinds of things. You have funding for the research coming from Battersea, but what about the future? So, and not just for the shelter, the minimum standards. What about Click to Feed? What about Not Without My Dog? So what is, and it's not a case of how are you going to get it? What I want to know is what do you need and how can people help you?
So if you're looking at what BarkingMad themselves need, we always need food. People asking us for food every day. An example is our Click to Feed. We generate between 1 to 2 tons of food a month. From our research, shelters need 300 tons a month.
Okay.
So we're not even...
You're not close.
We're a teaspoon in the ocean. And of course, no funder is going to be able to supply 300 tons of food a month. So, on the website we have, would you like to help us feed dogs in need and cats? So that is something we need help with. Our team,
so it's 2 levels. There's Click to Feed, which is somebody going on and clicking, which means it's a bowl of food.
Yes.
And then that becomes, okay, now the sponsor is going to give you that. But are you limited to, in terms of food, one partner? So Montego's on your website. Are you limited to only Montego, or can you get food from any provider?
Whenever we are donated food by any food supplier, we get that food out to the different charities across the country. We get calls every day. And also, it doesn't end up just being the charities. Sometimes it's a family that's just really hitting a rough patch and they need, when they've called us up and said, they're going to have to give up their dog because they can't afford their dog anymore. And we're like, well, what are the costs involved that you can't afford?
Yes.
If you're living in your house, that's not costing you anymore. And we find out it's maybe the food. And then we can assist them for a while with that.
Yeah, get them over the hump.
And, it's much better for us to provide the dog food than that dog to come into a shelter.
Much better. So there's a call to animal brands, animal food brands, to come to the party to say, right, we're going to support BarkingMad with food, because BarkingMad is supporting the whole lot, the shelters that need it. From the point of view of money, I know you've got a Back a Buddy link on your website to raise funds. What is that specifically for? No?
No.
What did I see?
I've got, we've got different campaigns that are on the website.
Okay.
But on those campaigns, so like, one, we need a vehicle.
Yes, okay.
That is insane because of the amount of travelling, and we realised it needs to be a tough vehicle because we have travelled some roads, let me tell you. And then sometimes what happens is if one of our dogs that has gone home to home is adopted, and then later on, a couple of years or whatever, because we commit to our dogs for life, if for any reason that dog gets returned, because BarkingMad isn't a physical shelter, we need to have funds to be able to place that dog into kennels while we try and find them a new home.
Right.
And we do work closely with other shelters, but we are very conscious of not trying to put on an extra burden of our dogs.
Yeah.
But we do want to commit to the dogs that we do home to home for life.
Yeah.
And then, the costs that are involved, driving to the shelters is petrol.
Which is going up.
I know. And getting there and bringing a team to help the shelters, because that is our main focus now, is helping the shelters help themselves in a way that in the past when we created Dogtown, that was very much focused as a behaviour shelter. So what would happen is if shelters were struggling to home a dog, we'd take that dog because we had the expertise to work with them. but that quickly bottlenecks. So that's not a sustainable thing. So
Yeah.
what we need to do is get to the shelters and say, okay, we can help you manage this situation
Right.
and help this dog move on to the next level. So we need obviously funding to get there, and then all the home-to-home adoptions. Most of the time the dogs are not sterilized.
Okay.
There's vaccinations,
Yeah.
there's chips. So there's a lot, although we don't have a physical shelter, we do have a lot of overhead costs.
Yes.
And when we are now getting these minimum standards in place, we need to make sure that if they say to us, I need some training for my staff, that we've got the funds and the manpower to get there
Yes.
and give them what's needed.
So I'm sure this is a cost that goes up and down depending on the day, the month, the week. But what are the running costs for BarkingMad? I mean, what is your wish in terms of a sponsorship? And secondly, does that sponsorship or funding or donation need to come from South Africa, or can we approach America, the UK, anywhere else, particularly the Battersea kind of funded areas?
International funds is always good because of our exchange rate. So, £5 or $5 might not feel a lot to those Americans and British people, but translated to rands, it ends up being quite a nice little donation.
Yeah.
So we can accept donations internationally. The running costs vary between 150 to 200,000 rand a month, depending on the amount of traveling.
Okay.
Depending on how much food we have to physically buy.
Oh wow! Okay.
Because,
so
yeah, because it's sometimes the click to feed food runs out very quickly.
Right.
The sponsor can only donate so much. And then we have to start looking at maybe helping, especially if they're in a faraway area. We normally buy and get it delivered to them. So we have, but that's always limited to what the donations have been. So we have our guaranteed donations every month of the 1 to 2 tons of food. Anything above that is dependable on what donations came in, how many dogs we've got in kenneling, how many sterilizations we're going to have to do this month, how far we're going to have to travel this month. But our team is pretty small and pretty solid. When we built BarkingMad, we made sure we looked for people that were experts in their field. Trix, who does adoptions, she gets all that stuff sorted. How she coordinates it, I don't know, but she coordinates it all. We've got Louise that works with all the shelters down in Cape Town, and we've got Mandy who focuses on the shelters in KZN, and then up in Gauteng we have Alex and myself that work with the shelters. So everything is fund dependent. So the more funds we have, the more of those initiatives we can go out, and the more shelters we can work with in a week, the further we can travel to go be with them and actually sit down with them, figure out what the issues, make a strategy for them, make a plan for them, be there on the ground with them to see if what we're thinking will work, if it will actually work. So we need to spend a little bit of time with them. But the dream is if we can get that to everyone, to the little guys that are struggling and hanging on for dear life there, it'll make them more sustainable. We will definitely look more professional to funders out there.
Yeah.
Again, when food companies or donors are wanting to donate to a shelter, if they do it through BarkingMad, they're going to know we've checked out the shelter.
Yes.
The shelter's legit. It's not a front.
Yeah.
And we're going to get that food, and we track it. So we create really good data for the food companies to see how much food's going into the shelter environment, how much is going in, and how much is still needed.
Okay. How do sponsors, donors, somebody with a vehicle that is going to be able to carry food and go on rough roads, how do they get to you?
So they can contact any of us via the website because we all know what's needed.
Yes.
But they can email me or call me. All our details are on the barkingmadinc.org website and contact us. And whoever they send it to will get it to the right person.
Right.
As I said, we're a small but strong team.
Yes. So we'll put all of those links in the show notes of this podcast. And the other thing that I think we'll do, because as an individual, I can go to the website to your donation page, and you can $50 if that's what you've got.
Yeah.
You can donate that. So we'll definitely put a direct link for everybody to be able to do that.
And you can donate to what you want. So like we've got specific campaigns, so if you want to donate something specifically, you can donate to that. And then we also have another link where it's our BarkingMad shop, where we sell some merchandise to try and raise funds. And on the BarkingMad shop, you can actually sponsor a specific dog and a specific thing. So you could sponsor for their care, you could sponsor for their medical costs. We're trying to make it that the money gets to where you want it to be, and where we need it to be.
Yeah. And to clarify again, that the dogs that are on the website that you want to maybe sponsor, Daisy or whoever, that that dog is in a shelter somewhere.
Yes.
Not just sort of sitting in a BarkingMad virtual space, if you know what I'm saying.
No. So the dogs that you can sponsor are dogs that we have got in kennel somewhere around the country.
Yeah.
The dogs that are sitting in homes wanting to be adopted home to home, they don't have a sponsor option.
Okay.
So we only post the dogs that we are physically caring for at this stage. Their profiles are what are on the website to sponsor. Okay,
so I think that's a very, very important thing to note and understand, is that it's a dog that is actually paying for their accommodation, if you know what I'm saying.
and again, that's hectic costs.
Yes, exactly. Okay. Last question before to kind of wrap up. What you've talked about your dream, your wish list, but in reality, where's BarkingMad going from here? Because you've got an app, you're working on an app, all of those kinds of things. Where's BarkingMad going?
So what we're focusing now, once we've been visiting the shelters, we're just finishing off a little bit of development, is that every shelter can then register onto the BarkingMad website. They can post their dogs to the website as well. So it really does become a hub. So if you are sitting in Boxburg and you want to look for dogs that are near you, you'll be able to type that into the website, and it'll show you all the shelters that have registered with the website, all their dogs that they've loaded. So you get a really good view of dogs that are in shelters. Also makes it a lot easier when somebody phones and says, I'm looking for a German Shepherd, then you just type in German Shepherd, and then you can see where all the German Shepherds are. And connected to that is the app, so it's going to be very easy to do mobile, and on the mobile app, it's going to be easy for you to like find a shelter near me, find a vet near me, show me dogs looking for homes in this area.
Yeah.
So everything is going to be on your phone, and we're hoping to have that out within the next couple of months. It could probably be released already, but we're changing something on the website, so we don't want to redo it.
Yeah, okay. Last thing, thank you so much for being here. and talking BarkingMad. I mean, we've been obviously working together for a long time, but it's really nice to sit and chat about BarkingMad and where it's going. Last, as I said, we're going to put all the details in the show notes, but just last, that website address again?
It's barkingmadinc.org.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'm hoping that this is going to bring some money, badly needed money.
Yeah, those 200 shelters out there are also hoping it brings some money.
Well, give it to BarkingMad, and you know that it's going to the right place.
I think one of the hardest things is after doing all those visits is that now you really know the reality.
Yeah.
So it motivates us every day to try and find the money to help them.
Yeah. Perfect. Let's get it in. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure.
So nice to talk to humans.